Hey everyone, it's Don. I'm definitely not in Ohio anymore. I'm at Papago Park on the east side of Phoenix, Arizona to bring you this episode of The Naturalist. So let's go. Well, life is harsh in the desert, so a lot of the shrubs and plants that grow here share a number of features that help them survive in this dry, hot, and arid climate. That includes things like having small leaves, thorns in many cases, compound leaves often being having tough bark, being low-lying shrubs or small trees, and basically being adapted to handle and conserve against water loss, which is a major challenge out here in the desert. So I'm going to show you a few plants as we walk around today that I can recognize here. Again, I'm out of my element here, and show you some of the traits that they harbor that allow them to survive out here and kind of what makes them special. Okay, I'm going to start with 2 or 3 species right in front of us. And this first species, which is this large shrub or small tree here that you see, is mesquite. Okay, so this is the stuff that we all celebrate as good barbecue wood, or in potato chip form. All right, so this is mesquite. And again, it's showing these very features that I have mentioned here. It has compound leaves. Okay, these are compound leaf is a leaf that has its own leaves. Leaf with multiple leaflets. Okay, so first of all, and that allows a large surface area for photosynthesis, but it minimizes the amount of surface area because the leaves are divided, through which water can be lost through evaporation. So it's a lot of the species you'll see out here have leaves like this. Compound leaves, very small leaves or very small leaflets. All right, and so that's mesquite. Now, this might be tough to see, but mesquite has very small thorns at each node. You probably cannot see that. Many of the species that you find out here have thorns, okay, to protect against grazing in large part. Okay, from grazing mammals that would have been out here. Okay, so that's mesquite. I've been seeing this all along my walk so far. Okay, and here are the pods of mesquite. This one just came loose. Okay, so that's a mesquite bean, and these are edible. Okay, you can extract those beans out of this pod and eat them like you would any other kind of dry bean. So this again was an important food of indigenous peoples that would have lived out here, still do live out here. And but I don't know how often that's done anymore. Okay, but you can indeed eat the beans that you find in the pods of mesquite. All right, so another shrub that I'm seeing all around, and this is a much lower shrub, sprawling, scattered, is this one. Okay, this is creosote bush. Creosote bush has very small leaves. It's a tough, brittle shrub, very resinous. I can see resin glistening on this shrub right now, and that's all provides basically a coating to these leaves to help protect against water loss. Okay, that's a phenolic resin. It's a very aromatic shrub, especially after it rains. Today, it's not very aromatic, but it is to some extent. Okay, so that's creosote bush. Very common. It's one of the most common shrubs you'll see out here. Okay, and then back here I wanted to show you there is one that is showing its fruits. So this would have flowered much earlier in the season, but here's a creosote bush showing these kind of fuzzy one-seeded fruits that it produces this time of year. Okay, so I've seen that on a scattering of shrubs, not consistently, but here and there. All right, so these are 2 key species out here at Papago Park. So let's keep going up the trail and see what else we see. Well, in this random patch of creosote bush, here's one that shows an interesting little anomaly. It looks like a ball of yarn almost, or fuzz that you'd find under your couch. So what this is a gall of a creosote gall midge. All All right, so which is a fly in the genus Asphodela. And what the fly will do is lay its eggs in a bud on this stem, along with a fungal spore, a symbiont, that as this morphological structure develops, as the plant produces it, the fungus grows to occupy the center of that gall. And the larvae of the midge feed on the fungus inside this gall. So those are generally called ambrosia galls. This is the creosote gall midge. And so I'm seeing a few of these on this. Here's another. Okay. And then eventually that larva will reach maturity, adulthood, and emerge as a new adult. Okay, so it's like a little tiny maggot inside that gall at the moment. All right, creosote gall midge. Next in front of me, we have this tree or shrub. This is Palo Verde. This, I believe, is blue Palo Verde, okay, which is really recognizable by its green branches, green twigs, very tiny leaves, compound leaves, and you know, it's a very common tree out here at Papago Park. And it's also exhibiting something in terms of adaptations to survive out here right now that I can show you. And first of all, it has very, very minuscule leaves. So it's sort of sacrificed leaf area, which is a surface through which water can be lost, to instead photosynthesizes through its stem, which is green and photosynthetic. Now the other thing it's exhibiting is those tiny leaflets on these leaves are all folded up this time of day. So I'm approaching, it's approaching about 11 a.m. It's starting to get hot and dry out here. And these little leaflets can fold together like in a prayer hand formation. And that basically further reduces their surface area exposed to the air when it gets hot and dry in the midday. And then those leaflets would open back up when it cools down. And so this tree is exhibiting that right now. So its leaves are almost, you know, not apparent at all, but they are there. They're just folded up, holding on to as much water as they can. All right, blue Palo Verde. This park, Papago Park, has a long history of basically disturbance. You know, at one point it was a military base. It was a concentration camp for German prisoners after World War II. Part of this park has a golf course that's been built on it, which of course has greatly modified the landscape. But it's, you know, now been recovered, restored as much as possible, and it reflects a lot of desert, sort of suburban desert vegetation around the Phoenix area. But, you know, it's not the wildest place you can get to, but it's probably the closest place you can get to if you happen to come through Phoenix. And so I plan to hit those little hilltops you see out there in the distance here shortly. But here's another species I'd like to show you. This should be recognizable, I think, to most people as a barrel cactus. Now, as I understand, these may have been moved here and planted. And so I don't know if this tree, this cactus belongs here or not. But what we have here are the remnants of the flowers and fruits of the barrel cactus, okay, which are now faded long past. But people can often forget that cacti are flowering plants. They produce beautiful flowers very often. You can eat some of the fruit that they produce. You can eat the cactus itself in many cases, but you got to deal with the spines, of course. So barrel cactus has long, curved, sharp spines. And again, in terms of desert adaptations, what cacti have done is sacrifice their leaves, and they do their photosynthesis in the stems. And those stems are succulent, so they hold on to a lot of water. And so they basically gave up on leaves and photosynthesized in their stem. But they've evolved, their leaves have evolved into these thorns. So the evolutionary history of thorns on cacti are as leaves originally. Okay, so through evolutionary time, this growth form has worked for cacti. So it's been selected for. It's worked for a lot of species that grow in the desert, whether they're cactus or not, other succulents. But there we have, barrel cactus at Papago Park. Well, here's a little wash with some, plant stems and trunks and things gathered. It's probably a little moister than where I was walking. And so there are a few other plants here. So this one is an herbaceous plant, so it's not a shrub. It's called brittle brush. Okay, it's not actually a woody shrub. It's a plant in the aster family. So here you can see the seed heads of the flowers, which are mostly gone. The seeds look like they are missing. Here's a few. Okay, there's the seeds of brittle brush, and it's noted for having these really velvety, soft, furry leaves. Okay, and the native peoples would have used this medicinally and made various products out of it. That's true for a lot of the things we're seeing. They were used by native peoples in various ways, either as food, medicine, products like glues, dyes, things like that. So, and this one happens to be brittle brush. Little first one I've seen on my walk so far today. Behind me we have the first appearance of those classic desert cacti, saguaro. So first I'll point out that, okay, this is a branch. There's 2 trunks on that from a single base. And so there are supposed to be more of these as we approach the hills. So we'll look for those. Okay, standing tall. And nearby is a prickly pear cactus. Okay, again, this is an edible cactus. This is the one that's eaten. Has nopales. I have a child who loves that stuff. Okay, pickled. And so, you can, when you live in a tough place like this, you've got to make do with what's present in terms of human food. So, and of course, all around we have a blue palo verde surrounding this saguaro. So that makes for a pretty interesting little picture there. Okay, so I hope to find some bigger saguaro up toward the hills, and so I'll let you know if I do. While I'm here at Papago Park, let me orient you a little bit to where we are and talk a little bit about geology, because I like to throw that in when I can. And so let's take a look around. So first of all, we're at a part of the park that's near a couple of buttes that you can hike to. So in the distance is the Little Butte, and this is the Big Butte. Okay, little and big. We are in the eastern suburbs of Phoenix. So in the center of your view, I can see downtown Phoenix, probably about 5-6 miles away from here. Okay, this park is sort of nestled in between the suburbs of Scottsdale and Tempe, Arizona. I'm here on today is November 11th, and it's a warm day. I think it'll get to be about 80 degrees. You might have heard about how hot Phoenix can get in the summer. It had over 100 days, over 115 degrees, I think, this year, or at least 100 days over 100. And so pretty amazing. But it's very pleasant this time of year and through the winter season. Of course, that's why people come out here. That's why they move out here from the east and from the west, frankly. And so, okay, so that's our orientation. Again, this is looking basically west in the direction I'm pointing. North, we have buttes to our north that are outside the park boundaries. Then this would be east, and of course south. Okay, so I'm just going to skirt around these buttes a little bit and see what I can see. I do see some larger saguaros up along these butte edges. Let's talk about the geology a little bit. So the one thing about western rocks and soils is they're a lot younger than what we have in the east. So when I do my episodes out in Pennsylvania and Ohio, I talk about rocks that might be sandstones and limestones that might be in the order of 350 million years or to 450 million years. All right, now here we're dealing with rocks that are more like 6 to 15 million years old. Okay, that basically are of volcanic origin originally and are much less eroded. The soil and rocks are younger near the surface and less decomposed. And you can really see this. They're just much more crystalline in nature. And, they are there's not a whole lot of just fine soil in this kind of environment. And then there are large chunks of granite. Okay, like this. And I think there's probably some basalts around here. Okay, these are just scattered all about. Okay, these boulder fields, essentially. Okay, so that's our landscape here in the eastern side of Phoenix. And every now and then the landscape, well, not every now and then, pretty frequently, in the distance, I had skirted around a golf course, which is, you know, it's always a little disheartening to see these big green patches of watered lawn in the middle of the desert. But that is what attracts people to this area. And so, you know, I have nothing against golfing or golfers, but you know, the construction of golf courses in places like this is a high, you know, puts a high demand on water in a place where it's quite limited already. So do with that what you will. Okay, so I'm going to skirt around up here a little bit, work my way from the big butte to the little butte and back to my starting point and sign off. Okay, let's go. Here's a park panorama. As I work my way back to my starting point, let me tell you a little bit about what I didn't see. And that includes many mammals or lizards or anything like that. I did see one. There are a handful of things you could see here. You know, as a disturbed suburban park, the mammal diversity or abundance is not that large here. But I did see a desert cottontail, a rabbit, of course, and I didn't have my camera running, and it was gone into a little drainage pipe before I could get it turned on. So that's the only mammal I saw. There's a handful of birds of unknown species. Just too quick and was looking at plants, you know, how that goes. And so, but you can see, you know, theoretically there could be bobcat or coyote, things like that out here, but they're not very abundant or common at this park. But as you would get outside of this area into the more wild Sonoran desert, you're more likely to see that kind of stuff, especially at night. If you come out into the desert at night, that's when a lot of the action happens in that regard, because it's just too hot during the day. All right. One thing I'm noticing is it's a well-used park. This view at the moment, you're not seeing people, but there are people hiking the trails, running. There's a fitness trail here. And so it's a well-used park. And relative to us Easterners or Northerners, activity patterns are kind of flipped out here, right? So you tend to do more outdoor things during the winter season and more indoor things during the summer, because it's just frankly too hot and dry. So it's quite comfortable with low humidity, and so it's again probably about 80 degrees today or so with low humidity. And so you know how they say it's a dry heat, you just bake. So okay, I'm gonna wrap up here soon, running out of time, and so I'll meet you at the end of the trail. The species diversity out here is small enough that you could pretty quickly learn all of the trees and shrubs that are in this particular park in a day. At least the major ones that you're gonna see. And so I just try to point out a few of those highlights to you, the native ones in particular, but there are also some non-native vegetation here associated with like this golf course. Like that's a eucalyptus tree. And those are planted in places that are Australia-like all throughout the US, like in Arizona and California. So eucalyptus, not native, can become an invasive species in some places. I also see some pines out here planted along this golf course that I think might be ponderosa pines. I have not been able to get up close to them. All right, so those are just in the distance there. But I think with that, I'll conclude my episode at Papago Park here on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, on a warm November day, 2024. Until next time, see you later. Bye-bye.